Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, a Dust Bowl drubbing as the Red Raiders go clinic mode in Stillwater.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And thanks as always for making us your first listen. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you. You're back in the LBK following a quick trip to Stillwater, Oklahoma. You've got just a minute to catch your breath as the Red Raiders do remain on the road this week with a short trip over to Fort Worth. We'll get obviously to that matchup as we set the table on an upcoming episode, but this one all about what went down in Oklahoma as the Red Raiders dropped the Cowboys decisively to the tune of their biggest road margin ever, all time. Like it's never happened this way before away from the LBK. So that's obviously got to be a good thing. And, hearing some conversation about whether or not this may have actually been your most complete ball game of the year, Chris, as you did Oklahoma State every way but right, man. And it went down very smooth.
Yeah. Maybe it's, we get into the PTSD of our fandom or our loyalty to Texas Tech from over the years. And I was somewhat concerned about this one. And the reasons were, okay, and it could have gone the other way either, and it did, but I didn't know if Oklahoma State, after the way that they had lost the other night, would they be very motivated and angry and spirited and all those things, or would they just be deflated? And then with Texas Tech, I think that at some point you worry, okay, you're playing certain guys a ton of minutes, you play 10 extra minutes, it's very stressful. How much is this taking out of you mentally, physically, all the stuff? And so like the combination of that, I was like, on the road. And then you scrapped and fought trying to beat these guys the last time, 51-33 with 9 to go in Lubbock. And then guess what? It wasn't, I think a 16 or 17-1 run. And so all that factored in and everything. But the way that this team started this game, because you're up 20-9, kind of like within about 5 minutes or so, and then you go to the locker room up 19, and you come out of the locker room and go on an 11-1 run. And at this point, I'm like, you're just not only are you worlds better than Oklahoma State, you're very mature, and It was a clinic. It was one of the most, and for whatever reason, when you go up to Oklahoma State, when you have won, you just hammer them. There was a time when Beard's Final Four team went up there, and you were up by so much that he basically took all 5 starters out, brought all 5 new guys in. You could hear everything everybody was saying, and those 5 reserves gave up like a 8-0 run just like that. And he's like, if you're only going to be ready to play, everybody was hearing it. I was like, that was the big drama in that game. Was like, well, he was pissed at the bench guys for giving up some of the lead, but this you just leaned on these guys all game long, and you took everything away. This was, as much as we'll get into offense, defensively, you took away everything that they wanted to do, and then they had no answer. And that's the beauty of all the pieces you have on offense, is you have guys that can make plays when there is nothing there. And they didn't, and they don't. And they missed some free throws because this is their MO on how they score. They get to the free throw line 21 times. They missed 10 of these. And when those started to miss, I think that's when the reality set in, like, we don't have a recipe or a path to victory here. We can't. It was what I said on the broadcast was, when you got is up what you did at a certain point, this is a triple option football team down 21 with, 8 to go in the third quarter, and you're not built for this. There's not enough time left, and then you just went on, and that didn't even matter. But that was kind of the various matchups. This just in, you're pretty damn good.
I'm sorry, did your mic cut? That's it, period? Okay, you don't even have to say anymore. Bring it to an end right there. Breaking news, yeah. Really in some ways that don't quite show up in the box score, Chris, aside from the final result, I was as impressed with this team maybe as I've been at any other point this year because of what you just came off of, the week that you had, even going all the way back to Tucson. There was a lot of energy, a lot of emotion, a lot of things expended over the previous week, and you do what you did most recently, and we talked all about, do you have anything left in the tank? Can you recharge quickly enough to get not just, off to a great start and make it look good in Stillwater, but can you get a win just in general? And they got off to a great start and actually made it look good. And so some intangible ways, I thought that said a lot about the team as far as just kind of the way they go about their business, I guess, and they prepare and they move from game to game. They treat success or failure. Both can be a challenge to kind of bounce back, quote unquote, from as you move forward to the next ball game. And I'm with you. I mean, I don't think there was, anything to suggest like, whoa, look out. You got to be on guard as far as necessarily going out here and looking bad. But it was a situation where you felt like, what you did and what Oklahoma State most recently did. And, energy might be lacking there at Gallagher-Iba. And maybe that could affect you even in a worse way than, I don't know, Oklahoma State. But you didn't allow any of that to even enter the conversation. You just went out there and you took care of business. You made it look really good. And doing that following the week you just had, I thought that was kind of that spoke as glowingly about the team as anything I could point to statistically from the day. And there's a whole lot to point to statistically, and we'll do some pointing here in a minute as it relates to the tear that JT Toppin remains on. But I thought that said a lot about the intangibles of your team and of your program that you handled it that way following the week you had.
I know one of the assistant coaches on the Oklahoma State staff, Jeremy Cox, and I had a long conversation with him before the game, and he was here back in the Gillespie era, and he was unfortunately part of that year when Chris Walker was the interim, and they were just kind of all stuck in this weird existence. Bubba Jennings, Jeremy Cox, and Chris Walker were the staff that year. And so I was talking to Coach Cox, who he's a great dude. He's been at SFA and UTEP and several places, but he loved his time in Lubbock, Texas, and just hated that it didn't work out. But it was a tough time for him at that point. But anyway, so he's back with Coach Lutz, and he's now on the Oklahoma State staff. Well, we found each other before the game, and he said to me, the team you're broadcasting for has real DNA and real culture. You can just see it. And it's funny because I think that as the year went along, we were back in, say, December, you kind of looked at this group of guys and you go, is there enough edge here? Do you have enough, personality? Because they're all kind of somewhat quiet, great dudes. And Grant said after the game, yesterday, that one of the officials said, "Man, you got a great bunch of kids. They don't talk back. They don't do this. They don't do that." And I think this is in some ways what Coach Cox was talking about. He's like, they have real, like, they just do it the right way. There's no selfishness. And we've kind of touched on this at different points, but you kind of wondered if you had enough edge to you, if you had enough, culture with all these new pieces. But it just speaks to what Grant has been able to put together. And then, Chance McMillan and Darion Williams are kind of the glue, but like you sprinkle in Christian Anderson, and then Elijah Hawkins it's just come on. And then JT is just a tremendous weapon, and it all just works beautifully right now. And it's pick your poison. They're very difficult to defend, and they're going to go up against some tough teams and even potentially better teams and all this stuff. But Texas Tech, in whatever setting they're in, they're going to be a tough out just because of the culture and the DNA that's there, because they just kind of keep coming, and there's a variety of ways they can hit you.
Yeah, it really translates, I think, to some poise, and that can be from like minute to minute in game. It can be from game to game as you kind of navigate the schedule or navigate a tournament, and hopefully that shows up for you in some of the biggest moments where some poise may be lacking for some others who are knocking at the knees a little bit more than maybe this team will. We would like to think, at least. As for the aforementioned JT Toppin. First, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And FanDuel's live betting feature electrifies every moment. Whether backing your team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch shot, you're never going to miss your chance to get in on the action. Plus, the app, easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. And make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. As for the aforementioned JT Toppin, much like the team with the game that he had against Arizona State last time out, Chris, we've been talking about, can he refill the tank quickly enough to be a big impact guy again in Stillwater? Resounding answer, yes. JT Toppin bucket watch status is full as hell, fuller than it's ever been, to use an industry term. This guy is on an all-time run right now, and we'll be asking whether or not he can continue that this week as they remain on the road in Fort Worth. But JT Toppin, if you have not seen this, became the first player this year with 30 points, 10 rebounds in consecutive games, the first to do it in a Big 12 context since Blake Griffin back in 2009. And I don't know what his ceiling is, so I hate to limit the guy by saying he's playing his best basketball right now. But as far as what we have seen, I mean, this seems like him really clicking on all cylinders and, kind of doing it in a variety of ways, but particularly those areas that are going to get him opportunities at the next level near the basket offensively, what he can do rebounding wise. Man, he's been as good as it gets, I guess.
Yeah, this was the first time since I think the 17 and 18 season that you had a player go over 30 in Big 12 games and back-to-back games, and that was Keenan Evans, and that's heavy steps is what that is. And JT just and the word that needs to be used to describe him is he's so efficient. He's not volume shooting. This isn't like forced. This is just, he was 17 of 22 the other night versus Arizona State, and in this one he was 12 of 17. So this is just, and it's funny. It's not very flashy. There's no highlight dunk. There's not this unbelievable athleticism that you're just like, oh my gosh, this is just doing the simple things over and over and really well. But what he does is he makes it look easy, because some of the angles and some of the his quickness with his hands around the bucket and the angles that he'll score on, he makes it look pretty easy, and it's not, because if it was, there'd be many more doing it, and there's not. But he just because he's not the biggest guy, and I'm telling you, if you stand, I think he's maybe listed at like 6'9", and I'm like 6'5", 6'6". He's not but a hair taller than me. I say he's closer to, and I'll be interested to see when the official measurements come out, when they do the combine stuff and all those things, when he goes through the process, which they already have all this as he went through it last year. It's just, but he's just really good, and he plays bigger than he is, I guess is what I mean by that. And I don't know. And
he maximizes to that size point that you're making there. He maximizes angles and like some leverage and things like that I think maybe compensates for some of what we're talking about, at least offensively, and maybe all the way around.
Completely agree. And there'll be because now he's starting to see some double teams.
Sure.
There's been a few turnovers because he just gets swarmed a bit, but he'll get more. He's going to get more and more practice from throwing out of a double team and trying to find the open guy. But it's just tricky because if you allow this team to have a 3-point contest, that's a dicey proposition for the opposition because, I mean, in Oklahoma State tried to mix it up a little bit, and I think that's what most teams will do is that you don't really declare, okay, we're going to double him some, then we're not going to double him some, and so it's kind of a guessing game win, and that's the beauty of like what D5 and what JT do when they start backing you down. They're good enough with their handles; they can kind of see it coming and all that. Not every time, but then you just got these shooters fanned out around the perimeter, and it's just, I mean, 37 3-point attempts, and you tie a school record in 16 makes. And earlier in the season, it was Bethune-Cookman that got the 16 makes that night. But this one was on the road in the Big 12 Conference. And yet your post player, JT Toppin, that we're sitting here talking about, goes over 30. Right. So, I mean, it's like, I mean, if you're like Steve Lutz or whatever, you're going, I don't know what we do here. I mean, I don't, you just kind of, I mean, say a prayer, keep hope alive, Steve. I don't know what you do there, but I mean, pick your poison, and it didn't really matter what poison you picked this time. You were drinking stuff that made you puke because they were hitting you either way.
And really, I think, I mean, all that is fun to watch and great to see, but really, again, you can't emphasize enough, what you're doing defensively that I think makes you the kind of team that can survive those days where some of that isn't going as smoothly on the offensive end, or you're not in a pick your poison kind of setting. And there are going to be some of those days, probably still in the regular season to come, but certainly when you're thinking March.
Absolutely agree with you. That's been the change. I think the offense was maybe not at this level, but the offense was always largely in part mostly there because I think it was stated on the telecast yesterday, and it's in the game notes. But you've had all 8 players in your rotation have gone over 17 at one point this season. You've had, I think, like 5 or 6 of them go over 20 in a game. I mean, so it's the defense that has really come on, and that's what Grant, his heart of hearts, he knows if you want to get to ultimately where we want to go here, that had to be a part of it, and you're starting to mix in quite a bit of it, and I just think these kids, like the culture and the DNA part, spills over to assignments and knowing personnel on the opposition and listening intently on what exactly to take away. There's so many little things that happen so quickly in a possession, how you guard a ball screen, not just over and under it, but what shoulder is this guy going to shoot it over? Or when we see this movement, this is what it's going to equal, and all these things. And you are starting to take a lot of those things away. And then you have to have the quickness and the energy to actually execute this. And Grant said it to me after the game yesterday. He's like, because there's just this natural bit of a lull in the schedule and in the season. It's like you're all talking brackets, you're all talking March, and yet there's still quite a bit to go. So kids can get easily distracted or kind of just not show up one game or 3 games or whatever, knowing you're in the tournament, may not be able to win the league, but we're just trying to get to the end here. But he's been very impressed, I think, with this group's ability to kind of stay locked in every step of the way. And it's been pretty impressive to watch. But, yeah, what you did to Oklahoma State, it would be illegal in most places. I mean, because it's just they're just reining them in from everywhere. I mean, it was just I hadn't had that much fun in a long time. I'll be honest with you, and those are rare.
Oh yeah, and Oklahoma State, you're just making me sad all over. What are you guys doing with this basketball program? Are you wanting to put it 6 feet under totally? Because you're close. Yeah. I feel like it's close to being buried.
It's so far from like their. I mean, and keep in mind,
think about what it used to be.
Yes, and they had Cade Cunningham there, the number 1 pick in the draft there 3-ish years ago, and but it's just like there's no excitement. They've started over with moving on from Mike Boynton to now Steve Lutz, and yeah, they have to be thinking big picture right now, because it's a far cry from the Eddie Sutton days and all that stuff. So anyway,
it used to be a huge place to get a win. Like if you were able to get one there, and it's still been trying.
And they used to put 12 or 13,000 there,
Yeah.
and when that thing is full, it's a problem. And there was a stretch there where Texas Tech could not win there. You couldn't. It was so difficult, but that's just not really the case anymore.
I'd like to see a pulse return to it, but obviously not at the expense of the Red Raiders, and the Red Raiders did nothing to help that pulse on Saturday. So that's our bad, I guess. Either way, Chris, as we hit a new week, I think we'll be hitting this new week with a top 10 basketball team in Lubbock. This is some speculating portion of the program, but
I mean, maybe, and we'll get into, like when we talk tomorrow, we'll get into maybe things that are as, if not more important than that aspect. But I guess the point you're bringing up is, I mean, this is what you're doing right now. I mean, you've already reached 20 regular season wins. This used to be a bit of a benchmark. You have 6 regular season games to go, and you're guaranteed 1 in Kansas City. So you have 7 games left. You're already at 20 wins. And for you to appear in the top 10, it's just if that's the way it falls, and I'm not going to be stressed about it one way or the other. If you stay at 12, if you go to 11 or 10 or whatever, if you're disrespected by the pollsters, whatever, I'm not going to sweat that. But the fact that you're asking that question here on February the 16th is nuts to me. Absolutely nuts. And it just speaks to because this was, I don't know, you tell me. These are fun because this is somewhat, not totally, but somewhat unexpected. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Nobody thought, I mean, I thought this team would be good. But not top 10 good. Not this late in the season. Not with what we saw with some of the issues in December. Not with what we saw with some of the injuries. Not with what everybody else was supposed to have. And there was 5 top 10 teams in this conference before the season even started. And yet you're sitting here at 11-3 in this league through 14. Come on, man. I mean, yeah, but
it would depend on what expectations I'm going back to. Because honestly, this aligns more with my off-season hype machine. And then reality kind of set in, and I'm like, okay, I was way off on thinking that this could be one of the most complete or deepest basketball teams that we've seen. But in the offseason, you're looking at the roster, and I was dreaming big. I was dreaming about competing for the Big 12 Conference. It's kind of difficult to immediately put that in the context of, hey, you're a top 10 national team. But obviously, if you are chasing that kind of hardware, then you would expect to be, I guess, that type of team. I didn't really get to where I figured Tech could be nationally as far as the picture, but I thought this really looks like a roster that can compete for something serious in the league. I was thinking that this offseason. Of course, it's come to fruition in a much different fashion because I'm also thinking about Devin Cambridge factoring in at that point in time, and I had all kinds of other plans for the Red Raiders. So, like, my offseason expectations actually kind of were this wild, and then reality started setting in. I'm thinking, man, I misjudged this. I misjudged this in a big way. Still a good basketball team, but is it going to be something that's special, or has us talking about, hey, you did this for the first time in your program's history, or you established this margin to the biggest tune that you ever had before? I got to say, after basketball started being played, I wasn't really thinking that, but they've circled back around to really some of that offseason kind of hype. And I don't know, Chris, just it's because of some of the acquisitions that you were able to make, particularly the cherry on top with JT Toppin, obviously, that really had you feeling like, man, you've paired this up with some of the best that your roster had to offer from a year ago with guys like Darion Williams and Chance McMillan. And now you're moving forward with some of those type of additions. Like you and I think, have been having some conversations roster-wise over the last few years where it's like, all right, well, you kind of got out there and you scrapped and clawed your way to a roster, and there's some nice pieces. Now we'll see what the head coach can do with this. And Grant McCasland did some nice stuff in year number 1, but this was, at least to me, I don't know if you agree or not, but kind of a different feeling coming into the year where I thought, man, there's actually there's some talent assembled on this roster, and there are some pieces that fit together. It seems like it's not just like, all right, we got to get 6 guys. So let's get the 6 best we. I don't know how to describe that feeling, but it felt a little bit different.
The roster construction, and then the ability to mesh it and squeeze everything out of it, like what you're seeing, is just, it's hard to do. And you're right. It's they found kind of a little bit of everything that they needed, and you wish you had another piece here or there, or maybe a little bit more length or whatever, depth, or I don't know. But and I not to be mean, but you just look back on it and go, man, maybe Devin Cambridge not being a part of this was a blessing in disguise, because of the way that it shrunk the rotation a bit. And, if he was worried about being hurt, or if he was worried about not getting enough minutes, or whatever it would have been, maybe that was a blessing, and you wouldn't be the same team if I don't know. I mean, there's no way to know, but sometimes that does happen, where you miss a piece and then you actually are better for it. I mean, so I don't want to put it all on him or anything, but yeah, this is just, and you just think back to Elijah Hawkins. I mean, he was, for the first 2 months of the season, kind of like, it wasn't a disappointment, but he was just a piece. And now I would say he's a crucial part of what you're doing game in and game out. And it's been fun to watch him figure it out and then play to his strengths, and then set so many of his teammates up with different opportunities, because what he's doing, setting the table for a lot of these rascals, man, and then scoring to go along with it, has been one of the more impressive in-season turnarounds that I guess I've seen. When you're talking about the height of the level that we're talking about, it's awesome. So
maybe it's all just traced back to some impatience early on, whether it's me thinking like,
and that's natural,
or with an individual player, it's just took a little longer than we thought possibly. And I'll tell you what, another change to the script, I certainly wasn't penciling in a freshman, this offseason, factoring the way that Christian Anderson has done. So the great thing at the end of it, man, who cares how you got here? You are here.
Completely
and it's
agree.
Really nice.
1,000%. Yeah. and I wouldn't, I mean, you're in a really good spot right now. And it's just fun to watch these kids compete. And I mean, what you're doing on the road is just stunning to me.
6-1 now, I believe, in Big 12 play away from home.
Yep. I mean, yeah, we had that all on our bingo card. No, I mean, no way. Yeah.
Just amazing stuff to watch, man. And hopefully that run will continue here this week as Tech remains on the road in search of a 7th Big 12 win away from the LBK. They'll be in Fort Worth, and we'll get to that on an upcoming episode, of course, to get you ready for Red Raiders and Horned Frogs. And we'll get into the week as well, taking a bigger picture look at some national projections and some national seeding, where Texas Tech is winding up, as some of that information divulged over the weekend, and plenty more still to come this week. So looking forward to it. Chris, enjoyed it as always, man. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you again next time. Guns up, and we'll just keep swinging away, people. Enjoy it. It doesn't happen often.
That's right. Don't take it for granted. That's certainly something I'm trying to remind myself of right now. Thank you for being out there. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the everydayers for always riding along, and shout out to the Matador Mob. If you're interested in becoming a Matador Mobster, hit the show notes to find a link to your free 14-day trial. That's your direct line to Chris and myself with one-on-one text and straight to your phone. Thanks for the time as always. For Chris, I'm Casey, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.